on that as well.
You're on
Yes,
that.
sir. Yes, sir.
It may be prudent to carry this back to a non-legislative session to discuss it so we can get some more things ironed out with. I still think there's going to be some hurdles in it. And I do not want to move in haste with this. So this may be something that we want to draw back on and possibly go back to the drawing board on. I definitely believe that's something we probably ought to do.
Okay, yes, sir. And
Yeah, that's, I think it's for that reason that I'd rather not have a delay on this. The language is the same. I thought that we were catching a grammatical error, but it does seem like
On that as well.
it's not exactly parallel, but it does the exact same thing.
You're on that.
yes, sir.
We've debated this
It
for
may
quite
be,
some time. We've just gone through a drought period where we're barely over the depth that we go to before we declare a water emergency. You know, my concern is we debate this and, you know, we have a water emergency and we don't have anything in place. So, I mean, we got the summer happening now. I'd rather just that we move forward with what we have. I don't think we're acting in haste. I think we've talked about this for quite some time.
I don't know if you guys can see me, but I was going to say, I do agree with Bruce there. The time, if we were going to try to have an effect on our, a positive effect on our water table, it would have to be put into place pretty quickly, because really in a month or 2 months, you know, we're going to start getting back out of the summer, and the damage will have already have happened. So I wouldn't want to drag this out for very long. And in fact, Jeremy, wasn't there some concerns, and you're even wanting to expedite this?
We were going to ask if I thought, and this is just me thinking out loud, I thought that we had convened enough to where we had ironed out all the details, but it's obvious that there's a couple of different things that are still need to be ironed out. So that was the goal tonight, but I certainly understand that we want this to be as clear as possible.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd be happy if we just made it the grammatical change, ended instead of a period, a comma, and continued that sentence. I'd be happy.
Okay.
Would it still have to go back to the first reading, even with just a grammatical change?
I'm not clear if you're making a motion to amend the bill, or are you asking on what paragraph?
On yes, L1, as Jeremy had mentioned. We thought that should just be one continued sentence, and that would clarify it, and that would be fine.
So you're proposing to put a comma after users and lowercase t? Okay. That doesn't appear to be substantive in nature. If you'd like to make that motion, but you're gonna need to make a motion for it.
Well, yeah, would this be the proper time, or we have not gone to the public yet? Do we need to follow that or go do with the motion, ma'am?
Depends on whoever's making the motion and when they want to make it. The public can take the bill that was forward at that time.
Yeah. Okay. Do you wish to make a motion?
I would make that motion.
Okay.
Slight change made at a comma instead of the period after users, and L1 at sentence and continue that sentence.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Okay. Due to lack of second, the motion dies. Okay. At this point, this is the first reading. At this time, we will open up. Is there anyone here to speak for this bill? 3467. Anyone here to speak against bill number 3467? Okay. Coming back then, the board, I think we've had our discussion and all. Okay, I need clarification. Are we, at this point, are we leaving this bill for the next meeting? Or are you withdrawing the expediting? I need clarification, please.
I'm gonna lean on Amanda a little bit here. It sounds like we had a motion on the table to get it just with a small change, grammatical change, and then it died. So does it have to go back to, no?
No, if you'd like to make a request to expedite, you could if the board wants.
I mean, I thought we were at that point, and I certainly think that we need to be mindful of this. So the request still stands. I know that we spoke about this with our liaison, so
Okay.
however it may fall.
Okay.
So
Okay, well, okay, we need a motion then from,
Your Honor, I move to place Bill 3467 on its second reading by title and description only.
okay. The motion that Bill 3467 be placed on second reading. Okay, and it does pass.
An ordinance amending the municipal code of the city of Ozark, Missouri, section 700-160, insufficient water supply relating to water system emergencies.
Any further comments from Director Jeremy? Are
The
we
one
good?
comment I was going to make really quick is if anybody's talking, any of the aldermen, if they would turn on their mic so I can hear them. If I couldn't hear Jean Ann's motion or anything, but I couldn't make out the words. Just wanted to point that out.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Okay. Any further comments from the board? Okay, if not, okay, Alderman Flores, do you have a,
My one question I wanted to ask Amanda is if there's any typos within the bill, does that need to be part of a motion made for it, or is that something that we can just amend a typo at any time?
A typo would typically just be fixed as a scrivener's error, but my understanding was it's not a typo, it was a change in the structure of the sentence.
The structure of the sentence, I see. Okay, I guess when I was looking at it, I was thinking that if there had been a comma instead of a period, it would have read correctly. Is that not right, Jeremy?
yeah, I think that did help clarify it. If it, like we mentioned earlier, right after on L1, the last word being users, put a comma there and remove that period. That's what we spoke about with Ms. Hutchinson. And then that was considered a non-substantive change based upon the.
Okay. So I would have to basically probably do the same thing Jean Ann did before. I imagine that I couldn't hear her at the time, but did she? I would make a motion to pass Bill 367 as ordinance 23-052 with removing said period and making it into a comma.
okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so the motion for bill number 3467 to become ordinance 23-052 with the addition of, let me say it right, adding a yep, removing a period and then making it a comma. Okay, motion by Alderman Flores, second by Alderman Hutchinson.
Alderman Owen. Alderman Galloway. Alderman Snyder. Alderman Flores.
Aye.
Alderman Hutchinson. Alderman Alder.
Aye.
We have 5 aye votes, 1 nay, motion carries.
Now we'll move on to bill number 3468.
Sorry about that, was muted. Your Honor, I move that we place Bill 3468 on its first reading by title only.
And seconded by. Okay, so motion to place bill number 3468 on first reading by title only was made by Alderman Flores, is second by Alderman Snyder. All in favor of voting on this motion, do so by show of hands. And it carries.
An ordinance adopting a water master plan.
Director Jeremy.
Yeah, it's the water night, but I thought we had a good non-legislative session. And this is something that we've been working on for a while with the water master plan. The last time it was updated was 2011. I just want to remind you, our again, to put plans in place, to put a roadmap in place, to identify projects. But what it really comes down to is fire protection and customer service. And I take a lot of pride, and I know Tracy does as well, in our entire water department and what our staff does. And by making these types of plans, it allows us to identify those areas where there may be some weaknesses or challenges. And we can put that on the roadmap and say, here's how we're going to accomplish those. So I'm very happy with what the result is. We've identified the main priorities. How we go about that is no different than what we're doing with our sewer master plan. We identified all these capital improvement projects, and guess what? They change based upon who's wanting what, where, or if a need develops. But man, it is great to have that plan. We would not have been in a position where we could get the latest round of ARPA funding from the state had we not had that plan. I could go on about planning forever, but this is a great document that will serve as our roadmap moving forward. So with that, any questions? Did anybody read all 8? No.
Well, yeah, on page 740, I was wondering what you meant by. Okay, Alderman Flores, since we can't see you, do you have any questions, sir?
No, sir.
Okay. I'm not seeing, okay. Okay, just open this up to the public at this point, since this is first reading. Is anyone here to speak for bill number 3468? Or against? Seeing no movement. Again, board response. Okay, bill number 3468 would be held over to the future meeting. Now we'll move on to bill number 3469.
I'd like to make a motion to place bill number 3469 on its first reading by title and description only.
And is there a second? Okay. Okay, motion is for bill number 3469 to be placed on first reading by title only, made by Alderman Owen, it was seconded by Alderman. Alder, excuse me. I can't combine. Okay, so all in favor of this, discuss it, show it by hands. Okay, thank you.
An ordinance approving the preliminary plat for Kingpin subdivision and authorizing the city clerk to sign the final plat upon compliance with the terms of this ordinance.
Yes. Change directors now.
So I'll start and then I'll hand it over to the Public Works Director. This is for the preliminary plat for the Kingpin subdivision. The city and staff has been working with the property owner to separate off a parcel of land for a future development of the Chadwick Flyer Trail. In reviewing the past subdivisions of this property, staff determined that had met the threshold that where we could administratively split this of up to 3 tracks. This will be at least the 4th time it's getting split. So with that, that's why it's coming before you as what we call a major subdivision process, due to the number of times it needs to go through the public hearing process. In evaluating this application, staff didn't see any concerns with approving this application. We are recommend approval of this application along with the Planning Zoning Commission. Again, this is just to separate off a parcel of land for the city to acquire for the future development of the Chadwick Flyer. At this time, I'll turn over to the Public Works Director, Jeremy Parsons, to further answer any questions.
All right. I know you're tired of me by now, so I'll be fast. We can get through. I'm going to show you just the key elements of this. Cameron did a great job explaining this. This property has had administrative lot splits in the past. And again, this is no longer a study area. It is our project area. And we've worked with the property owner. As you all know, we've discussed this, work with the property owner to identify exactly what we need. And that's kind of in that light turquoise blue color there. And then the pink or purplish pink that goes to the north there are the easements that we're going after right now. This is why we were to the point where we had to go into the subdivision process. Back in 2015, that was split, and the maximum number of a lot split is 3. So that rolled us over into a subdivision process. So we worked with staff, planning, legal, and then we worked with the property owner as well. And it is unique, but we can stand up here and say we followed our own rules and we did this right. And then we presented the preliminary plat to the commission, the Planning and Zoning Commission. They understood our end goal and why we were going about it this way. So with that, any questions?
On Flores, just make sure because I can't see you.
No, sir, no questions.
Not seeing any. Okay, thank you, sir. Since this is first reading at this time, is anyone here from the public to speak for bill number 3469? Or against? Okay, not seeing any movement. Again, last response, board members. Any questions? Okay, Alderman Flores. I mean, excuse me, Alderman Owen. Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion to place the bill number 3469 on the second reading by title.
Okay, is there a second to this? Okay, so there's a motion to put bill number 3469 on second reading and made by Alderman Owen and second by Alderman Hutcherson. All in favor, do so by show of hands. And it passes.
An ordinance approving the preliminary plat for Kingpin subdivision and authorizing the city clerk to sign the final plat upon compliance with the terms of this ordinance.
Any additional comments from either directors? Okay. Or questions from the board? Okay, not seeing any.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt bill number 3469. That's ordinance number 23-053.
Okay. Yeah, motion by is there a second to this? Okay, so motion is for bill number 3469 to become ordinance 23-053. Motion made by Alderman Owen, second by Alderman Alder. Yes.
Alderman Hutchinson, Alderman Snyder, Alderman Alder, Alderman Owen, Alderman Galloway, Alderman Flores.
Aye.
We have 6 aye votes, motion carries.
Moving on now, we're moving now on to bill number 3470.
Your Honor, I move that we place bill number 3470 on its first reading by title only.
Is there a second? Okay, so the motion is for bill number 3470 to be on its first reading by title only. The motion was made by Alderman Galloway, is second by Alderman Owen. All in favor of this, will show of hands. And it carries.
An ordinance amending the municipal code of the city of Ozark, Missouri, section 14030, general guidelines regarding disposal of real property and surplus real property.
Okay. City
Thank you, Mr.
Administrator.
Mayor. Yes, this ordinance is dealing with how the city disposes of real property. Okay. In the past, the city has always looked at it as surplus property that it would get rid of. If it had a piece of real property that it needed to dispose of, and we found that it was no longer being used for the purpose that it was intended. We look at whether or not it could be used. Would it ever be used in the future? If it didn't have any purpose for the city, then it was deemed as surplus property. As we evaluated that over the last year, one thing I know that the past mayor and the board wanted to do was bring transparency to that ordinance. And that was very, very important. And we did that. During that process, what we've realized is that there are times in the city of Ozark where real property may not be surplus property. It may be a piece of property that maybe the city has, maybe it's utilizing, but there's a higher and better use for that property. We've seen that happen. We've had that happen a few times in the last year where we have been approached to consider economic development opportunities where we might be able to, for instance, build a new building on the square where an whole building fell down, and we can utilize a portion or small of the public sidewalk to be able to accommodate some new things and stuff like that. So what we wanted to do was go back and actually create definitions for two different types of property, giving the Board of Aldermen the full ability to be able to do what they need to do. But again, I stress, to make sure that we maintain transparency in disposing of anything that the city owns. So what this ordinance does, and I know that you can ask specific questions to the changes that Ms. Calloway and I have worked on, but it really breaks it up in the disposal of real property and surplus property. So instead of just lumping it all into surplus property, it gives you the opportunity to look at them both. I will point out that the surplus property is something that we're still going to go through the process on. This ordinance maintains that. It requires the city administrator to bring forward to the Board of Aldermen at the beginning of the calendar year. I don't remember exactly what date, gave me a little time to work there. But February, to bring that forward, a list of any surplus property that there was, with the justification of why it would be defined as surplus property. One thing we wanted to make sure that we put in place, that as we were defining what surplus property was, we created findings of facts. That's what we call conditions of which something would be deemed and defined as surplus property. So when that list comes to you on an annual basis, there could be surplus property. There'll be years when there's really nothing to bring forward because maybe the city doesn't have any surplus property to bring to the board for their consideration. Maybe that was dealt with in the previous year or something. But yes, there will be surplus property. It will be on a scheduled time for the administration to bring that forward. It will have findings of facts to define it as surplus property. But then again, if the Board of Aldermen is approached with opportunities that would benefit the community, that too can be a consideration that the Board of Aldermen can decide based on the circumstances of what to do with that property. And with that, I'll answer any questions, or Ms. Calloway can certainly answer any as well with regards to the ordinance.
On Snyder?
How many pieces of real property do we have?
Well, I mean, we own lots of property. Do you mean
Things that you deem that are surplus and not real, and not yes.
no? The city owns dozens of pieces of property, like this building here, or the sewer treatment plant and wells. We probably own 100 pieces of property. But in the process that was just adopted, nor this process, administration hasn't brought anything to the Board of Aldermen deeming it as surplus property. None of the real property. We've not done that yet. So not gone through that process of bringing forward any surplus property to the Board of Aldermen. Well, I mean, there's properties out there that we're not utilizing, or that the Public Works Director has said, hey, this used to be the side of a water booster pump, and no longer is that water booster pump there. Maybe it's a small parcel of property that lies between two other pieces of, maybe two houses or something, where we would go through the process of determining that's not a piece of property that is large enough for us to utilize. Maybe it's not big enough. Maybe it doesn't have economic development potential. Therefore, it might fit, but I haven't ran it to the litmus test yet.
We've got we have property, I know, that is set vacant for many, many years. That could be deemed a surplus property, but it is considered real property. Is that correct? The reason I'm asking that, we just argue, I say argue, I mean, that's Mr. Galloway knows what I'm talking about. We argue this, we discussed this a few months ago to change this for the better from what my opinion was. So I don't think that we need to change it. That's my opinion, because we, as a board, we made that argument that this is what we want. With respect to like the real property, I know that we need a police station. I would like to see us use a piece of that real property to build our police force a nice building instead of a hand-me-down that we have on Brick Street. That's my opinion right now, and that's bothering me something fierce, that we have all these potential properties out here that have potential for development, but yet we can't take care of our police officers and get them a new building. That's the problem that I have with this, all the way across. I'm at ends why we're changing it back. And I don't seem, if I seem disgruntled, because I am, because it seems like we're wishy-washy on things and we don't need to be that way.
Okay, Alderman Galloway?
So the thing that I think brought it first to the board's attention was Torgerson's proposal. There wasn't a principled way to convert our real property over for development such that we could fill in that space here under the surplus property. I mean, it'd have to go to bid. It doesn't make any sense at all to put it through, to call it surplus. It's not surplus. First of all, it's a sidewalk. We use it. It has an intended purpose, and there's only one buyer for it. It's the person that we need to develop that spot out over there so we can build the building. So the challenge is, you know, how do you principally amend the ordinance to allow for that kind of transaction to where you're not in the future cutting a special ordinance for each and every other little developer or big developer that comes along, so that you can say to anybody, if you fall within this bright line, this is the process. We're doing it every time. We're not doing it because you're John Torgerson and a former alderman. You're not doing it for somebody else that has no connection to the city of Ozark. We're going to do it for actually everybody that fits that particular criteria. But I do agree that so that's where it came from. So then you look at it and go, well, how do you divide the bright line? And so what the structure of this was, and as you can tell, I had a lot of involvement in the discussions with it, is, well, what's wrong with the structure that we have? We have, right now, you can't sell anything unless the city administrator defines it as surplus. We haven't had a single piece of property brought up for us under that ordinance. That's what's wrong. So put into the revision February 1st of every year, city administrator has to come up with a list of surplus property, has to, and they have to present it to us. So that gets rid of the inertia. I'm not being critical of the process, because I suspect that there was another improvement that needed to be made to hurry this process along and get it moving. In addition to requiring the city administrator to compile a list every year according to factors and present it to us, we vote on it, and that is in front of everybody here. We vote on it, and that does two things. Like I said, it makes sure that it comes to light, but it is not the city administrator's decision and written findings that's transparent. It's that, and it's presented on our docket, talk to us in public, and then after we listen to it, we vote it up or down. And I think that improves the process of transparency, and it also moves it along to where we are moving surplus property out. So that's kind of how it was designed to be dealt with, and we looked at a lot of different ways on building that bright line. But my feeling is that I like the structure that we wrote. And that was what kind of carried the day is I liked the idea that you have a multi-factor test. I like the idea you declare it surplus. And that's to me seemed to be your bright line. And that process already existed. But I still think that we have to have the principled way of dealing with everybody that's wanting where especially where, you know, an economic development where there's going to be a single person that's interested in that particular piece. And then the city's question is, no, we use it, or we're about ready to use it, or we've got plans to use it. But that price benefits the public and benefits the coffers of the city. And it doesn't make any sense for that to go out to bid. And we have that process as well. And that would be where Torgerson would be an example of fitting in. I just didn't want something for him. You know, I'm not trying to say that there's anything wrong with him. I just don't like that appearance. So anyway, that was where it came from.
I had a comment.
Okay, Alderman Flores, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, the thing I was going to talk about with this is when we came up with that ordinance originally about surplus property, you know, it does take us a lot of time and effort to go through that. And I think that, you know, there's always something in a bill or something that in an ordinance that you can improve upon. And I'm not saying there's nothing in that ordinance that we couldn't improve upon, but I didn't want to undo that ordinance because we had spent so much time to get through it. And I agree with Alderman Galloway on the fact that, you know, if there's surplus properties that we have and there's things we're not using and we don't need it and we have an intent of selling that property, that original ordinance that we're just adding to now is a very clear, consistent way of being fair about us getting rid of property that we're not using. But I do think that we need something to it's not a one size fits all though. It doesn't really address something where someone needs 3 feet somewhere and we happen to own that property and we're not trying to get rid of that property, we're using it, but it makes sense or it's good for the public or whatever that may be. And so we just didn't need a one size fits all. So I think this gives an exception to something where it's like, it's not surplus. We're not declaring it surplus. We're not trying to sell it. We may be using it, but at least if something comes our way, it gives us the opportunity of being able at least to take a look at it and decide whether it's something that's good for the public or not, without having to declare it surplus when it's truly not. It had to be something that we would all agree was worth going down a certain road if a certain opportunity for the city came up. And I think that's what this gives us is an ability to not undo all the work we've done, but also add to this bill and you know, continue to be transparent about everything. So that's where I was at with it and why I support it.
Anyone else from the Alderman? Okay, I'm not seeing, since this is the first reading, at this time, is anyone here to speak for bill number 3470? Anyone here to speak against proposed bill 3470? Okay. Again, one more time, Alderman, any questions? If not, then bill number 3470 will be held over for a future meeting. This time we'll be moving to second readings, final passage of a couple of bills. Okay. First one we're going to be looking at is bill number 3461.
Your Honor, I move that we place bill 3461 on its second reading by title only.
Is there a second? Okay. Okay, the motion is that bill number 3461 be brought over for a second reading by title only. The motion was made by Alderman Flores, second by Alderman Snyder. All in favor of voting on this motion, do so by show of hands. And it passes.
An ordinance authorizing the city to enter into a contract with Capital Paving and Construction LLC for pavement and construction services.
Director Jeremy, no?
I don't have anything to add.
Well-
Sorry.
Well, anybody have any questions for Director Jeremy regarding this? I'm not seeing any, so,
Your Honor, I move that we adopt Bill 3461 as ordinance 23-054.
is there a second? Okay, so the motion is to adopt Bill 3461 that becomes ordinance number 23-054. The motion was made by Alderman Flores, a second by Alderman Snyder. Roll call, please.
Alderman Snyder.
Aye.
Alderman Hutchinson. Alderman Owen.
Aye.
Alderman Flores.
Aye.
Alderman Galloway.
Aye.
Alderman Elder.
Aye.
We have 6 aye votes, motion carries.
Thank you. We'll move now on to Bill number 3462.
I'd like to make a motion to place bill number 3462 on the second reading by title.
And is there a second? Okay. So the motion is to place bill number 3462 on its second reading by title only. Motion was made by Alderman Owen, a second by Alderman Snyder. All in favor of voting on this motion, do so by show of hands. And it carries.
An ordinance approving the preliminary plat for Creek Bridge Phase 4 and authorizing the Director of Planning and Development to accept the dedication of the public streets and easements to the city as shown on the preliminary plat upon the applicant filing and recording a final plat that substantially conforms to the preliminary plat, and authorizing the city clerk to sign the final plat upon compliance with the terms of this ordinance.
Yes, sir, Director.
Nothing to add. You have to answer the question.
Any questions for Director Cameron? Okay, I am not seeing any, so
I'd like to make a motion to adopt bill number 3462, this is ordinance number 23-05.
do we have a second? Okay, so the motion is to adopt bill number 3462 to become ordinance number 23-055. The motion was made by Alderman Owen. It was seconded by Alderman Snyder. Roll call, please.
Alderman Elder.
Aye.
Alderman Flores.
Aye.
Alderman Snyder. Alderman Galloway.
Aye.
Alderman Owen.
Aye.
Alderman Hutchinson. We have 6 aye votes, motion carries.
Thank you very much. At this time, City Administrator Steve Childers.
Just want to remind everybody that our next non-legislative meeting will be August 17th from 8:30 to 10:30 here in this location.
Okay.
And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Good.
All I have to answer any question.
Any questions for our City Administrator? Any comments from anyone, closing comments before we? Yes, Alderman Snyder.
Yeah, absolutely. We had our storm issue last week when the winds come through. And the county was definitely gracious to help us open up their spot over by B&B and help assist us with that. And I think they need to be commended for allowing us to do that. And then I know that we had some issues with it because they were overwhelmed with the loads that were going in. So we opened our place up out off of Highway 14. So it's definitely helping. We had a lot of damage. I know everyone here saw it. We had a lot of straight line winds, more so than what people realized. There was a lot of damage here in Ozark. And then, with that being said, did we, as far as storm cleanup, back after the Joplin tornado, didn't we have something to do with an emergency fund? Didn't we have an emergency fund created here in Ozark, set off to the side for such an emergency should it ever occur? Was that ever established? I thought that it was. I could be wrong.
No.
I don't recall establishing any emergency fund or specific storm damage or anything of that nature. I mean, we have a general fund reserve that we began building and we continue to build and we budget for every year. But nothing specific in the budget for like a storm damage type emergency.
Gotcha. Because I know that was definitely an issue that we were going to have to contend with, especially with the limb pickup. A lot of folks had taken their limbs and their debris out to the roadway, thinking that we were going to pick it up, and that never occurred. And I know there may have been some miscommunication with that. But what I did have a little bit of an issue with, and I actually had a lot of an issue with it, is the perception was we weren't going to help our citizens if we didn't get any type of FEMA reimbursement. And I think that puts a sour taste in folks' mouth. that we're not gonna help them unless we're refunded for it. And that's my 2 cents worth on that one, because it's the way it was written. That we were not gonna get any type of reimbursement back from FEMA. And it's just, I definitely the optics look bad on that.
Yes, Alderman.
So are you suggesting that we think about having an emergency fund?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. I think it would be a good thing to do for just such an occasion, because this came out of nowhere. These thunderstorms, they developed overnight. And at first they said, hey, we're gonna have some winds and rain. The next thing we know, I know when I look outside my back glass, when I see walnuts and maples literally folded over, I heard whistling, and that memory come back to me from the hurricane I wrote out. And that's what it looked like when I saw my trees bend over. And I have some pretty tall trees and pines. Yeah, there's a problem there, but I definitely think we should research that and maybe stick some money back at the side to help address this, because we have some older folks that couldn't do that. They couldn't do anything with the limb pickup. And I know that a couple of neighbors and myself, even in my neighborhood, we went out and we helped folks pick what we could up to help get it off the streets, because I'm afraid if it wasn't taken off the streets, it's going to be left there for quite some time, assuming that we were going to come and get it.
Alderman Hutchinson.
I think it'd be a great idea to have a community pool for emergencies. And we do have the Finley River Community Foundation for purposes just like that. And if citizens want to go together, I'd always thought the role of government is to provide infrastructure basically. Now it's grown a little bit beyond that. But that's where our community is just wonderful. And I have to say, I saw many neighborhoods around the city gathering together, helping neighbors, helping each other. And that's what makes Ozark such a special place, is that it's a small town feel where people care about each other. And people donate outstanding amounts of money. Community Foundation, well, Finley River Community Foundation, which is part of the Community Foundation of the Ozarks, is a great place, a great asset to this community where millions of dollars are given for different purposes there. And that would be the best place to set up something like this, I think.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your comments. And you actually kind of beat me to the punch, because I want to have a debriefing with Director Jeremy, the administrator, communication, about what took place last week and what we could do to do better, and regarding funding and things like that. Because I want, because I'm still learning and I don't know what is the protocol we can do, not do. I wanted to have a debriefing, since we now pretty well, we're not past it, but we're past the crunch time and all. So, well, if no other comments, motion that we adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, made by Alderman Galloway, second by Alderman Alder, which for some reason I can't say tonight. All in favor, just a show of hands. And we're dismissed or adjourned.
Okay. Yes. Well, and that's. Every